It started with something simple. A gift. A DNA test. A chance to learn more about family history, a fun look into the past. But for one woman in Detroit, the past wasn't something to be explored. It was something that had been hidden, for a reason. She had always trusted her father. He was the man who held her hand as a child, who kissed her goodnight, who taught her right from wrong. He was the man she believed she knew. The man she had loved without question for 34 years. But the truth was, she had never really known him at all. When the DNA test results arrived, they didn't just change her life. They destroyed it. Because the man who raised her, the man who was supposed to protect her, wasn't her biological father. And if that was a lie, what else had been hidden? At first, she didn't believe it. Maybe the test was wrong. Maybe it was a lab mistake, a mix-up. But the numbers didn't lie. And when she brought it up to her mother, she saw it. The hesitation. The panic. The way her mother's hands shook when she tried to explain. The truth was about to come out. And some secrets are meant to stay buried. The questions started as whispers, as quiet doubts in the back of her mind. But the more she pressed, the more the tension grew. Her father stopped looking her in the eye. Her mother withdrew. And then came the phone calls. Late at night. Conversations in hushed voices, doors shutting quickly when she walked into the room. She wasn't supposed to find out. She wasn't supposed to ask questions. But it was too late. The damage was already done. And then, everything changed. It started with an argument. Her father's voice, louder than she had ever heard it. Her mother pleaded, crying. And then, sudden silence. The next morning, she woke up to an empty house. The air felt wrong. Too still. Too quiet. She called out for them, but no one answered. And then, she saw it. The front door, slightly open. A streak of something dark on the floor. A shape, motionless in the hallway. And just like that, the family she had always known was gone. The police arrived to a crime scene. No forced entry. No sign of a break-in. Just a body. And next to it, torn, blood-stained pieces of a DNA test. Someone had wanted to keep the truth buried. Someone had killed to protect a secret that had been hidden for decades. But why? And who else had known the truth? Her search for answers had uncovered a family secret no one was prepared to face. And now, someone died because of it. A simple DNA test. A single decision. A moment of curiosity that should have been harmless. But for one family in Detroit, the truth wasn't just painful. It was deadly. Betrayal, hidden identities, and a murder that no one saw coming. Before we dive into the shocking details of this case, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications. We uncover the darkest, most chilling true crime stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know. Do you think all secrets should be revealed? Or are some truths better left unknown? Detroit, Michigan. A city of resilience. A city of stories. A place where families have built their lives for generations, where neighborhoods hold memories of struggle, of triumph, and sometimes, of secrets buried too deep to stay hidden forever. For most of her life, Emily Carter never questioned who she was. She grew up on the east side of Detroit, in a modest but loving home. The kind of house where the walls were lined with family photos, where laughter filled the kitchen on Sunday afternoons, and where a father's love felt as steady as the foundation beneath her feet. Her father, Richard Carter, was everything a little girl could hope for in a dad. Strong. Protective. The kind of man who worked long hours to give his family a better life, who kissed her scraped knees as a child, who cheered the loudest at her high school graduation. He had been her rock, her guiding light. To Emily, their bond was unshakable. He had always been there. Every birthday, every milestone, every moment of doubt, he was the one who reminded her who she was. That she was strong. That she was loved. But what if none of it was real? Growing up, Emily never noticed the small cracks in the foundation of their family. The way her mother tensed whenever someone mentioned the past. The way her father always seemed to change the subject when she asked about their ancestors, about family history, about the details that most people took for granted. It was easy to overlook at the time. After all, he was her dad. Why would she ever question him? But secrets have a way of surfacing. And in Detroit, a city where the echoes of the past linger in every street, in every home, Emily was about to uncover a truth that had been hidden from her since the day she was born. It all started with a simple DNA test. It was meant to be fun. A way to explore her roots, to see if the family stories about their heritage were true. Her father had always told her they had deep Irish ancestry, that their bloodline stretched back to generations of proud, hardworking men and women. Emily had always loved that idea. She wanted to see it for herself. To feel connected to something larger than life. But when the results came in, nothing made sense. Her DNA told a different story. A story that didn't match the history she had been told. There were no Irish ancestors. No connection to her father's side of the family at all. The percentages, the markers, the very foundation of her identity, it didn't add up. And then, in one simple sentence, her entire world shifted. Parent-child relationship not detected. It was impossible. It had to be a mistake. But no matter how many times she checked, no matter how many times she tried to rationalize it, the truth was staring her in the face. Richard Carter was not her biological father. Emily's mind raced. If he wasn't her father, then who was? She wanted answers. But when she went looking for them, the people she trusted most weren't willing to give them. So she did what anyone would do. She went to her mother. At first, her mother laughed. Brushed it off. Said those tests weren't always accurate. But Emily saw it in her eyes. The hesitation. The fear. And then, the denial turned into anger. You're being ridiculous. You're overthinking this. Drop it, Emily. But Emily didn't drop it. She couldn't. She needed to know the truth. And the harder she pushed, the more the tension in the house grew. Richard Carter, the man she had trusted all her life, barely spoke to her. He avoided eye contact. He stayed out late. He wouldn't answer her questions. Then, the fights began. Late at night, behind closed doors, Emily could hear them. Her parents whispering, arguing. Voices rising, falling, then silence. The kind of silence that felt thick with unspoken words. And then, one night, everything came crashing down. It was late. 11:42 p.m. Emily had been lying awake, staring at the ceiling, when she heard it. A thud. A crash. A voice raised in anger. Then another. Then screaming. She bolted from bed, heart pounding. She ran down the stairs, and what she saw would haunt her forever. In the living room, her father stood, face twisted in rage, fists clenched at his sides. Across from him, her mother, tears streaking her face, arms trembling. And in the center of the room, an envelope. A DNA test. Torn open, its contents spilling onto the coffee table. It was out in the open now. The truth, the betrayal, the lies that had been festering beneath the surface for decades. Richard's face darkened. His voice, usually calm, was filled with something unrecognizable. You don't understand, he growled. You don't know what you've done. Emily had never seen him like this before. Never felt this kind of fear. Her mother tried to step between them. Tried to explain. But then, in an instant, it happened. A shove. A stumble. The sound of something breaking. And then, a scream. At 11:57 p.m., a 911 call came in. A woman, frantic. Words tumbling out between gasps of breath. Please, hurry. He lost control. There's blood. Oh my God, there's so much blood. When officers arrived, the house was eerily quiet. A single light flickered in the living room. The front door, wide open. And inside, the aftermath of a family torn apart by secrets. There, on the floor, lay Richard Carter. A deep wound across his temple. A pool of crimson spreading beneath him. His hands, still clutching the torn pieces of a DNA test. And standing over him, Emily. Frozen. Silent. Her hands were shaking. Her face is pale. This was no longer just a secret. No longer just a family dispute. It was something much worse. It was murder. But was it self-defense? A crime of passion? Or was there something more sinister at play? Because the deeper detectives dug, the more they realized. Richard Carter wasn't the only one with secrets. This wasn't just about DNA. This was about something much, much darker. As detectives arrived at the Carter home, the questions started piling up. Who could have committed such a brutal act? Was this truly a crime of passion, or was there something deeper at play? At first glance, the evidence suggested a tragic domestic dispute, an argument that turned deadly. But nothing about this case was simple. And the more detectives dug, the more tangled the web of secrets became. Emily Carter stood in the living room, hands still trembling, eyes wide with shock. She swore she didn't mean to hurt him. That she had only wanted the truth. That she had never expected things to spiral this far. But was she telling the whole story? Detectives turned their focus to those closest to the victim, starting with the man at the center of it all, Richard Carter. The father Emily had known her entire life. A hard-working man. A devoted parent. But beneath the surface, was he hiding something even darker? It didn't take long for investigators to uncover inconsistencies in Richard's life. Financial troubles. A history of controlling behavior. And most importantly, a desperate attempt to keep the truth about Emily's real father a secret. But what about the other man in Emily's life, the one she had never even met? The DNA test had revealed a name. A man Emily never knew existed. Her biological father. His name was Daniel Green. And up until the night of the murder, he had no idea she existed. When detectives tracked him down, Daniel seemed just as shocked as Emily had been. He claimed he had never met Richard Carter, had no involvement with the family, and certainly had no reason to kill him. But the timing was suspicious. A man suddenly learning he had a daughter, and then, within days, the man who raised her ends up dead? Daniel insisted he had nothing to hide. But then, the DNA test revealed something else. Something that no one, not even Emily, was prepared for. A new discovery. Narrator, tense, building suspense. The test had confirmed Daniel was Emily's biological father. But there was another match. A relative. A name buried deep in the records. A man with a criminal past. Someone connected to Daniel's side of the family, a half-brother. A man who had been in and out of prison. A man who had been accused of violent crimes before. Had Emily's search for the truth put her in the middle of something far more dangerous? Detectives began looking into Daniel's past. And what they found sent a chill down their spines. There were rumors that Daniel's half-brother, Marcus Green, had been involved in organized crime. He had a record of violent offenses. And most importantly, he had been in Detroit the night of the murder. But why would he care about Emily? Why would he want Richard Carter dead? Had Daniel told him about the DNA test? Had this revelation sparked a chain of events that led to murder? Or was Marcus simply a red herring, just another shadow in a case already clouded by lies? The deeper investigators dug, the more suspects seemed to emerge. And for every clue that pointed in one direction, another sent them back to square one. One theory suggested that the murder wasn't about the DNA test at all, that it was about money. Detectives discovered that Richard Carter had recently adjusted his life insurance policy. His wife, Lisa Carter, stood to receive a substantial payout. And given the increasing tension in the household, could money have been the real motive? But Lisa insisted she had nothing to do with it. She claimed she had tried to calm Richard down, had begged him to accept the truth, to move forward. But in the days leading up to his death, he had become paranoid. He had told her that someone was watching the house. That something wasn't right. Was this just the delusion of a desperate man trying to protect his lies, or had he been telling the truth? Then, detectives found something that changed the course of the investigation. A note. Crumpled in the bottom of a trash can in Richard Carter's office. It was short. Blunt. A single, chilling sentence. You should have left it buried. The handwriting was unfamiliar. There was no signature. No indication of where it came from. But now, detectives had a new question: who had sent it? Had Richard been hiding more than just the truth about Emily's paternity? Had he been running from something? And most importantly, had someone killed him to keep that truth buried forever? The investigation was only beginning. But one thing was clear: this was no random act of violence. This was personal. And before it was over, more dark secrets were about to come to light. For weeks, the case had been a tangled web of lies, betrayals, and dead ends. Every lead detectives followed only seemed to add more questions. Who had the most to lose from the DNA revelation? And more importantly, who had the most to gain from Richard Carter's death? Then, just when the investigation seemed to be at a standstill, a breakthrough came that no one could have anticipated. New evidence. A revelation that changed everything. It was the piece detectives had been waiting for, the one thing that would blow the case wide open. It started with a fingerprint. A partial print found on the torn DNA test results, barely visible under the dried blood. Forensics had overlooked it before, but now, with fresh eyes, they ran it again through the system. A match. But not to Richard Carter. And not to Emily, either. The print belonged to someone investigators hadn't yet considered a real suspect. Someone who had been lurking in the background, close to the family, but never directly involved. A name appeared on the screen. Marcus Green. Emily's newly discovered uncle. The half-brother of her biological father. Marcus had a record: assault, fraud, a history of manipulation. But he wasn't just a career criminal. He was a man with a past deeply connected to Emily's mother. Detectives combed through old records, trying to understand how he fit into the story. That's when they discovered something chilling: an old police report from more than 30 years ago. A report involving Lisa Carter. Before she had married Richard, before Emily was even born, Lisa had been involved in a tumultuous relationship with Marcus. A relationship marked by fear and violence. According to the report, Lisa had filed for a restraining order against him. She claimed he was controlling, obsessive. That he wouldn't let her go. But then, the paper trail stopped. No further reports. No follow-ups. It was as if Marcus Green had simply disappeared from her life. Or so she thought. But now, he is back. And Richard Carter? He was the only person standing between Marcus and the family he once tried to control. At first, Marcus denied everything. He claimed he had never met Richard Carter, had never even known about Emily's existence. But then, the surveillance footage surfaced. A grainy security camera, a few blocks away from the Carter home. The night of the murder. There, captured in the shadows, was a figure. Hooded. Moving quickly toward the house. And then, just over an hour later, the same figure, slipping away into the night. The timestamp? 11:55 p.m. Just 2 minutes before the 911 call. When confronted with the footage, Marcus cracked. He confessed, but not in the way detectives expected. He didn't deny being at the house that night. He didn't deny his fingerprints were on the DNA test results. But what he did deny was being the killer. He pointed the finger at someone else. Lisa Carter. Emily's mother. Lisa had always played the role of the grieving wife. The woman caught between a husband's deception and a daughter's search for the truth. But now, Marcus was telling a different story. He claimed Lisa had called him days before the murder. That she was desperate, that she was afraid Richard would leave her, afraid that the truth about Emily's real father would ruin everything. He said she wanted to make sure Richard never spoke about it again. Was Marcus telling the truth? Or was he trying to manipulate the investigation, just like he had manipulated Lisa decades ago? But then, detectives found the final piece of evidence. A text message, sent from Lisa's phone to Marcus just 2 days before the murder. "We need to fix this. Before it's too late." It was enough. Enough to arrest both of them. But in the end, only one of them would take the fall. Lisa Carter, the woman who had spent years keeping her past hidden, was charged with conspiracy and second-degree murder. A mother, willing to do whatever it took to protect the life she had built, even if it meant taking one away. And Marcus Green? He had orchestrated the crime. But with a plea deal, he walked away with a lesser sentence, serving just 15 years behind bars. For Emily, the truth was worse than she ever imagined. Her father was dead. Her mother was behind bars. And the family she thought she knew had never existed at all. A DNA test had set everything in motion. A single piece of paper, capable of unraveling an entire life. But in the end, the truth didn't set Emily free. It destroyed everything she had ever known. This is the story of how a simple test uncovered more than just ancestry. It uncovered a family's darkest secret. And it left one man dead because of it. The case of Richard Carter's murder became a media sensation. A story of deception, betrayal, and bloodshed, fueled by a single DNA test. It had all the makings of a tragic novel. But for those at the heart of it, this wasn't a story. It was their lives, torn apart, exposed for the world to see. As Lisa Carter and Marcus Green faced trial, the nation watched. News outlets covered every detail. Courtroom sketches were splashed across newspapers. And inside the courtroom, a daughter sat in silence, trying to process the unimaginable. For Emily Carter, this wasn't just about justice. It was about unraveling the life she thought she knew. And the hardest part? The realization that she had been betrayed by the people she trusted most. The prosecution painted Lisa Carter as a desperate woman. A mother willing to do anything to protect her family's secrets. They argued that Richard Carter had been silenced to keep the past from coming back to haunt her. Marcus Green, the man with a criminal past, was framed as the enforcer, the one who carried out the plan. But there was a problem. His plea deal meant he would serve just 15 years in exchange for testifying against Lisa. The defense took a different approach. They claimed Lisa Carter had been manipulated. That she had been pressured by Marcus, coerced into a situation she couldn't escape. That Richard's death had been an accident, an argument that spiraled out of control. They painted Lisa as the real victim, a woman trapped in a nightmare of her own making. But then, the prosecution revealed their final piece of evidence. The text message. "We need to fix this before it's too late." It was the moment that sealed Lisa Carter's fate. The jury deliberated for only 6 hours. And when they returned, the verdict was clear. Guilty. Lisa Carter was convicted of second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Her sentence? 30 years to life. In the courtroom, there was no celebration. No relief. Just silence. The Carter family, once whole, now shattered beyond repair. Emily sat frozen as the verdict was read. The mother she had loved. The woman who had kissed her goodnight, packed her school lunches, taught her how to tie her shoes, was now a convicted murderer. She should have felt justice. Closure. But instead, she felt something else entirely. Loss. Her father was dead. Her mother would spend the rest of her life behind bars. And the truth that had started it all, the DNA test, felt more like a curse than a revelation. The media called it the DNA murder case. Experts debated how something so small, one test, one moment of curiosity, could have unraveled an entire family. But for Emily, there was no debate. There was just one question she would never stop asking herself. Was the truth really worth it? But just when it seemed like the case was closed, something unexpected happened. Months after the trial, Emily received a letter. It was from Marcus Green. The man who had helped destroy her family. In it, he claimed Lisa Carter hadn't been the mastermind at all. He said there was someone else. Someone who had wanted Richard Carter dead long before the DNA test ever surfaced. Someone who had been watching from the shadows. But Marcus refused to say more. "I've told you enough," he wrote. "Some secrets should stay buried." So was justice truly served? Or was there another layer to the story, one that would never be uncovered? For Emily Carter, the truth didn't set her free. It left her haunted by the past, by the family she lost, by the questions that would never have answers. And in the end, she learned the hardest lesson of all. Some truths aren't meant to be found. This is the story of how a simple DNA test uncovered a lifetime of secrets. And how, in the end, the past always has a way of catching up. The truth behind this family's tragedy has finally come to light. But no amount of justice, no conviction, no explanation, can undo the damage that was done. A single DNA test. A moment of curiosity. One decision that unraveled a lifetime of secrets, exposing the lies a family had been built upon. But when those secrets surfaced, they didn't just change lives, they ended one. Richard Carter is dead. Lisa Carter is in prison. And Emily Carter? She's left picking up the pieces of a life she no longer recognizes. All because of a truth that was never meant to be found. But the question remains, was it worth it? Could the truth ever justify the violence? Or would some things be better left in the past? What do you think? Did Lisa act out of desperation? Was Marcus Green manipulating the situation from the start? Or is there still more to this case that remains hidden? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're fascinated by real-life cases where dark secrets lead to devastating consequences, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We bring you the most shocking true crime stories, and trust me, there are more to come. Like, share, and drop your theories below. And remember, sometimes, the truth isn't just painful, it's deadly.